Baby found a German Shepherd. Hiding in a carnival ticket booth. What happened next? Shocked the crowd. What happened next will shock you. Before we begin, make sure to like, share, subscribe, and comment below, telling us where you're watching from. The story you're about to listen to started on a night that seemed ordinary, but ended in a way that left an entire town in tears. 3-year-old Max had no idea that wandering away from his mom for just 2 minutes would lead to the most incredible discovery of his young life. The Springfield County Fair buzzed with energy as families wandered between game booths and food trucks. Colorful lights painted the evening sky in shades of pink and gold, while the sweet smell of caramel apples mixed with the distant sound of carnival music. Children's laughter echoed through the warm summer air as parents chased after their little ones, trying to keep up with boundless energy. Sarah Chen clutched her son, Max's tiny hand, as they walked past the ring toss games and spinning teacups. At 3 years old, Max had the curiosity of a detective and the speed of a runaway train. His bright blue eyes darted from one attraction to another, taking in every sight and sound with wonder. "Mommy, look at the pretty lights." Max pointed toward the Ferris wheel, its colorful bulbs creating a magical glow against the darkening sky. Sarah smiled, adjusting her grip on his small fingers. "They are beautiful, aren't they? Should we go get some cotton candy before we ride the carousel?" Max nodded enthusiastically, his blonde curls bouncing with each step. The fairgrounds were more crowded than usual tonight, with families taking advantage of the perfect weather. Sarah navigated through the growing crowd, keeping Max close as they made their way toward the concession stands. But crowds can be tricky things, especially when you're 3 feet tall and surrounded by legs moving in every direction. One moment Max was right beside his mother, and the next, a group of teenagers rushed past them toward the haunted house, creating a wave of people that swept between them. "Max?" Sarah's voice carried a note of concern as she spun around, searching for her son's familiar blue jacket. "Max, where are you?" The little boy found himself standing alone near a row of game booths, the crowd having carried him several yards away from his mother. Instead of crying, Max looked around with the calm curiosity that made him special. He could hear his mother calling his name, but the sound seemed to come from everywhere at once. That's when he heard it. A soft whimpering sound, barely audible over the carnival noise. It was coming from somewhere close by, somewhere that sounded hurt and scared. Max followed the sound, his small feet carrying him toward a weathered ticket booth that sat dark and abandoned at the edge of the midway. The paint was peeling, and a handwritten sign read, "Closed for repairs." But the whimpering was definitely coming from inside. Getting down on his hands and knees, Max peered under the wooden counter. What he saw made his heart skip a beat. A large German Shepherd lay curled in the shadows, his dark fur matted and dirty. The dog's brown eyes looked up at Max with a mixture of fear and desperate hope. "Hi, doggy," Max whispered softly, the way his mother had taught him to speak to animals. "Are you okay?" The dog's tail gave the tiniest wag, but he didn't move from his hiding spot. Max could see scratches on the dog's face and what looked like dried blood on his collar. The sight made Max's chest feel tight with worry. "You're hurt," Max said, his voice gentle and understanding. "Don't worry, I won't hurt you." Slowly, carefully, Max crawled under the counter to sit beside the trembling dog. The space was cramped and dusty, but Max didn't mind. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a piece of cotton candy he'd been saving for later. "Are you hungry?" he asked, holding out the pink fluff. The dog sniffed cautiously, then gently took the cotton candy from Max's small hand. As he ate, Max noticed something strange about the dog's collar. It was thick and black, but there was something embedded in it that looked like a small electronic device. The device had a tiny red light that blinked slowly, like a heartbeat. "What's that thing on your collar?" Max asked, reaching out to touch it. The moment his fingers made contact with the device, the dog flinched and let out a low growl. But he wasn't growling at Max. His eyes were fixed on something beyond the booth, and his body had gone rigid with fear. Max followed the dog's gaze and saw 2 men in dark jackets standing near the carousel. They weren't enjoying the carnival like everyone else. They were looking around with sharp, searching eyes, and something about them made Max feel scared too. "Are those the bad men?" Max whispered to the dog. The German Shepherd's growl grew deeper, and he pressed closer to Max, as if trying to protect him. Max wrapped his small arms around the dog's neck, feeling the animal's heart beating fast against his chest. Meanwhile, Sarah's search for Max had turned frantic. She ran from booth to booth, calling his name and asking everyone if they'd seen a little boy in a blue jacket. The carnival security had been notified, and their voices crackled over walkie-talkies as they spread out across the fairgrounds. "Max! Max, where are you?" Sarah's voice was getting hoarse from shouting. A security guard named Tom approached her, his expression serious but kind. "Ma'am, we've got everyone looking for him. Can you describe what he was wearing again?" "Blue jacket, jeans, and light-up sneakers," Sarah said, her voice shaking. "He's only 3. He wouldn't just wander off like this." But Max wasn't wandering. He was sitting in that dusty booth, holding a scared dog and watching 2 men who made both of them feel afraid. The dog had stopped growling, but Max could feel the tension in his body. Something was very wrong here. "What's your name?" Max asked the dog softly. The dog looked at him with those intelligent brown eyes, and Max could swear he was trying to tell him something. The red light on his collar blinked faster now, and the dog kept glancing toward the 2 men who were moving closer to their hiding spot. "My name is Max," the little boy said. "I'm going to call you Hunter because you look like a brave hunter dog." Hunter's ears perked up at the name, and he licked Max's cheek gently. For a moment, the fear seemed to fade from his eyes, replaced by something that looked almost like relief. The 2 men in dark jackets were getting closer now. One of them was talking into a phone, his voice too low for Max to hear the words. The other one was scanning the crowd with binoculars, searching for something or someone. "We need to stay very quiet," Max whispered to Hunter. "I think those men are looking for you." Hunter seemed to understand. He pressed himself lower against the ground, and Max curled up beside him, both of them hidden in the shadows under the ticket booth counter. That's when Max heard his mother's voice, much closer now. She was talking to the security guard, and they were walking in the direction of the booth. Max wanted to call out to her, but something told him to wait. A hunter was shaking again, and the red light on his collar was blinking so fast it looked like it might explode. "Ma'am, we'll check every booth and every ride," Tom was saying. "Don't worry, we'll find him." "He's never done anything like this before," Sarah replied, her voice thick with tears. "He's such a good boy. He always stays close to me." Max's heart ached hearing his mother cry. He wanted to run to her and hug her tight, but Hunter was depending on him now. The dog had pressed his head against Max's shoulder, and Max could feel him trembling. "I won't leave you," Max whispered to Hunter. "I promise." The 2 men in dark jackets had split up now. One was heading toward the game booths on the left, while the other was coming straight toward the abandoned ticket booth. Max held his breath as heavy footsteps approached their hiding spot. The man stopped just outside the booth and spoke into his phone. "No sign of him yet, but the tracker is definitely active in this area. He's got to be close." "Tracker?" Max looked down at the blinking red light on Hunter's collar. These men weren't just looking for any dog. They were tracking Hunter with that device. "Keep looking," the man continued. "We need to find him before anyone else does. If word gets out about what he knows, we're all in trouble." Max's 3-year-old mind couldn't understand all the words, but he understood enough to know that Hunter was in danger. These men wanted to hurt his new friend, and Max wasn't going to let that happen. The man's footsteps moved away, but Max could still hear him talking on his phone. "The boss won't be happy if we come back empty-handed. That dog is a walking security risk." Hunter's breathing was shallow and rapid, and Max could feel how scared he was. The little boy did the only thing he could think of. He started singing softly, the lullaby his mother sang to him when he was scared. "Twinkle, twinkle, little star, how I wonder what you are." Hunter's breathing began to slow, and some of the tension left his body. Max continued singing, his small voice barely audible over the carnival sounds. Up above the world so high, like a diamond in the sky. As he sang, Max noticed something else strange about Hunter's collar. Besides the blinking device, there was a small metal tag that was partially burned and scratched. He could make out a few letters, K9, and what looked like part of a badge number. "Are you a police dog?" Max asked quietly. Hunter's ears perked up at the word police, and his tail wagged slightly. Max felt a surge of excitement and fear. If Hunter was a police dog, why was he hiding? And why were those men trying to find him? The questions swirled in Max's mind, but he pushed them away. Right now, all that mattered was keeping Hunter safe. The dog had stopped shaking, and he was looking at Max with something that looked like gratitude. "Don't worry," Max said, stroking Hunter's soft fur. "My mommy will help us. She's really smart, and she always knows what to do." But even as he said the words, Max wondered how he was going to explain all of this to his mother. How could he make her understand that Hunter wasn't just any dog, that he was special and scared and needed their help? The carnival continued around them, families enjoying rides and games, completely unaware of the drama unfolding in the abandoned ticket booth. Max held Hunter close, both of them hidden in the shadows, waiting for the right moment to reveal themselves. The red light on Hunter's collar continued to blink, a silent beacon that connected him to a past Max couldn't understand. But somehow, the little boy knew that finding Hunter wasn't an accident. It was the beginning of something bigger, something that would change both of their lives forever. As the two men in dark jackets continued their search, moving further away from the ticket booth, Max made a decision. He was going to protect Hunter, no matter what. The dog had already been through enough, and Max wasn't going to let anyone hurt him. "We're going to be okay," Max whispered to Hunter. "I promise." And in that moment, as a 3-year-old boy held a scared German shepherd in his arms, neither of them knew that their meeting would soon uncover secrets that had been hidden for years, secrets that would shock everyone who heard their story. The search for Max had grown more intense as the minutes ticked by. Sarah's panic had spread through the carnival like wildfire, and now dozens of people were looking for the missing 3-year-old. The security team had expanded their search to include every corner of the fairgrounds, while local police had been called in to help. "We've checked the carousel 3 times, Tom, the security guard, reported over his radio. No sign of the boy anywhere near the rides. Sarah stood near the entrance gate, her hands shaking as she called Max's name for what felt like the 100th time. Other parents had stopped their own fun to join the search, understanding that any child could be their own. The carnival owner had even agreed to turn down the music so they could hear better. "Max, please baby, if you can hear mommy, come out." Sarah's voice cracked with emotion. Meanwhile, hidden under the ticket booth counter, Max heard his mother's desperate calls. His heart ached to run to her, but every time he started to move, Hunter would press closer to him, trembling with fear. The dog's eyes kept darting toward the 2 men in dark jackets, who were now systematically checking every booth and attraction. "I want to go to mommy," Max whispered to Hunter. "But you're scared of those men, aren't you?" Hunter's response was a low whine that sounded almost like he was trying to explain something. The red light on his collar was blinking faster now, and Max noticed that every time one of the men got closer, the light would pulse more rapidly. "That light is like a signal, isn't it?" Max said softly. "They're using it to find you." The little boy might have been only 3 years old, but he had always been smart for his age. He understood that the men weren't trying to help Hunter. They were hunting him. One of the men was approaching their hiding spot again. This time, he had a small device in his hand that was beeping softly. The beeping got faster as he got closer to the ticket booth, just like Hunter's collar light. "The signal is definitely strongest here," the man said into his phone. "He's got to be hiding somewhere in this area." Max held his breath as the man's heavy boots stopped just inches from where they were hiding. Through a small gap in the wooden boards, Max could see the man's legs and the strange device in his hand. "I don't care what it takes," the man continued his phone conversation. "We need to find that dog before someone discovers what he really is. The boss made it clear. This stays buried." Hunter's whole body went rigid at the sound of the man's voice, and Max could feel the dog's muscles tense like he was ready to run or fight. But he was also protecting Max, keeping himself between the little boy and the potential threat. The man crouched down and peered under several of the nearby booths, his flashlight beam sweeping back and forth. Max pressed himself as far back as he could, pulling Hunter deeper into the shadows. The dog seemed to understand the danger and remained perfectly still, hardly even breathing. "Come on, boy," the man muttered. "We know you're here somewhere. Make this easy on yourself." But Hunter wasn't going to make anything easy. He had found Max, and something in the dog's loyal heart had decided that this little boy, was worth protecting. The same instinct that had made him a good police dog now made him determined to keep Max safe. The flashlight beam swept closer to their hiding spot, and Max squeezed his eyes shut, hoping they wouldn't be discovered. That's when he heard a different voice, one that made his heart leap with joy. "Max, Max, where are you, sweetheart?" It was his mother, and she was getting closer, but so was the man with the flashlight, and Max could see that he was getting frustrated with his search. "Nothing here," the man said into his phone, "but the tracker says he's definitely in this area. Keep looking." As the man moved away, Max heard his mother's voice again, this time talking to someone else. "He's never done anything like this before," Sarah was saying. "Max is usually so well behaved. He knows to stay close to me." "Don't worry, ma'am," came another voice. Tom, the security guard. "We'll find him. Kids his age sometimes get fascinated by something and lose track of time. He's probably just exploring." Max wanted to call out to them, but Hunter was looking at him with those intelligent brown eyes, and Max could see the fear there. The dog was depending on him, and Max had promised not to leave him alone. "I know you're scared," Max whispered to Hunter, "but my mommy is nice. She'll help us." Hunter seemed to consider this, tilting his head the way dogs do when they're thinking. The red light on his collar had slowed its blinking slightly, but it was still pulsing steadily. That's when Max heard his mother's voice again, much closer this time. She was talking to Tom, and they were walking directly toward the ticket booth. "We should check the abandoned booths too," Sarah was saying. "Maybe he got curious about one of them." "Good idea," Tom replied. "This old ticket booth has been closed for repairs, but kids sometimes like to explore places they're not supposed to." Max's heart started beating faster. They were going to find him, which meant they were going to find Hunter too. He looked at the scared dog and made a decision that would change everything. "Hunter," Max whispered, "I'm going to tell my mommy about you, but you have to trust me, okay? She's going to help us both." The dog looked at him for a long moment, then gently licked Max's cheek. It was as if he understood and was saying goodbye to their secret hiding place. "Max?" Sarah's voice was right outside the booth now. "Max, are you in there?" The little boy took a deep breath and called out, "Mommy, I'm here." The relief in Sarah's voice was immediate and overwhelming. "Max, oh thank God, where are you, baby?" "I'm under the counter," Max said, his voice small but clear. "But Mommy, I'm not alone. There's a dog here, and he's scared." Sarah dropped to her knees and peered under the counter, her flashlight illuminating the cramped space. What she saw made her gasp. Her son sitting with his arms around a large German shepherd, both of them looking up at her with wide, trusting eyes. "Max, honey, come out from there right now," Sarah said, trying to keep her voice calm even though her heart was racing. "That's a very big dog, and we don't know if he's friendly." "He is friendly, Mommy," Max said earnestly. "His name is Hunter, and he's hurt. Look at his collar. It has a blinking light." Sarah could indeed see the strange device attached to the dog's collar, and something about it made her uneasy. This wasn't just any stray dog. The collar looked official, almost military. "Max, I need you to come out slowly," Sarah said. "Don't make any sudden movements." But as Max started to crawl out from under the counter, Hunter whined and pressed closer to him. The dog clearly didn't want to be separated from the little boy who had shown him kindness. "He doesn't want me to leave him," Max explained. "Mommy, there are bad men looking for him. They want to hurt him." Sarah's mother instincts went into high alert. "What bad men, Max?" "The men in dark jackets," Max said. "They have a machine that beeps, and they're using it to find Hunter. He's really scared of them." Tom, the security guard, had been listening to this conversation with growing interest. "Ma'am, can you describe these men?" Before Sarah could answer, Max spoke up. "They're over there by the game booths. One of them has a phone, and the other one has binoculars." Tom looked in the direction Max was pointing and immediately spotted the two men. Something about their behavior had been bothering him all evening. They weren't acting like carnival guests. They were searching for something, with the focused intensity of people on a mission. "I'm going to call this in," Tom said, reaching for his radio. "Something's not right here." But before he could make the call, one of the men in dark jackets appeared at the entrance to the ticket booth. He was tall and intimidating, with cold eyes that swept over the scene with calculating precision. "Excuse me," the man said, his voice polite but with an underlying edge. "I couldn't help but notice you found our dog." Sarah instinctively moved closer to Max, her protective instincts flaring. "Your dog?" "Yes," the man replied smoothly. "He escaped from our transport vehicle earlier tonight." We've been looking everywhere for him." Hunter's reaction was immediate and dramatic. The moment he saw the man, he began growling low in his throat, his hackles rising. The dog pressed himself protectively in front of Max, clearly agitated by the man's presence. "That doesn't look like a happy reunion," Tom observed, his hand moving to his radio again. The man's smile became strained. "He's been traumatized by his escape. We're from a private security firm, and he's one of our trained dogs. Very valuable, very dangerous if not handled properly." "He's not dangerous," Max said firmly from his position behind Hunter. "He's scared. You're the one who's scary." The man's eyes flicked to Max, and Sarah didn't like what she saw there. This wasn't someone who cared about a lost dog. This was someone who saw Hunter as a problem to be solved. "I'm going to need to see some identification," Tom said, stepping between the man and the family, "and some proof that this dog belongs to you." The man's expression hardened. "I don't think you understand the situation here. This is a matter of national security." Those words sent a chill through Sarah. National security? What kind of dog was Hunter, and what had Max stumbled into? "All the more reason to see proper identification," Tom replied firmly. "I'm not releasing this dog to anyone without proper documentation." The man reached into his jacket, and for a moment, Sarah feared he was going for a weapon. Instead, he pulled out a phone and spoke into it quickly. "We have a problem," he said. "The dog has been found, but there are civilians involved, yes, including a child." Hunter's growling intensified, and the red light on his collar began blinking rapidly again. Max noticed that the dog's attention was divided between the man in front of them and something else, something that was making him even more agitated. "Mommy," Max whispered, "there's another one coming." Sarah turned to see the second man in a dark jacket approaching from behind them. They were being surrounded, and she didn't like it one bit. "Tom," she said quietly, "I think we need backup." But Tom was already ahead of her, speaking into his radio. "This is Carnival Security requesting immediate police assistance at the north entrance. We have a situation involving a potentially stolen animal and suspicious individuals." The first man's face darkened. "That won't be necessary. We have jurisdiction here." "Jurisdiction over what?" Sarah demanded, her fear giving way to anger. "You can't just claim a dog without proof, and you certainly can't intimidate a 3-year-old child." Hunter seemed to sense the rising tension. He stopped growling and instead began to whine softly, a sound that was heartbreaking in its intensity. The dog was clearly torn between his fear of the men and his desire to protect Max. "It's okay, Hunter," Max said softly, reaching out to stroke the dog's fur. "We won't let them hurt you." The moment was interrupted by the sound of sirens in the distance. Tom's call for backup had been heard, and help was on the way. The two men in dark jackets exchanged worried glances. "This is becoming complicated," the second man said to his partner. "Maybe we should withdraw and wait for another opportunity." "No," the first man replied firmly. "We can't let this situation get out of control. Too much depends on getting that dog back." Sarah felt a surge of protectiveness toward both Max and Hunter. Whatever these men wanted, it wasn't good for either of them. She moved closer to her son, ready to defend him if necessary. "Max," she said quietly, "I want you to stay very close to me, okay?" "What about Hunter?" Max asked, his small hand still resting on the dog's head. "Hunter too," Sarah said, making a decision that would change all their lives. "He's with us now." The police sirens were getting closer, and the two men in dark jackets were clearly running out of time. The first man pulled out his phone again and made another call. "Sir, we need extraction. The situation has become public, and local law enforcement is involved." Whatever the person on the other end of the line said made the man's face go pale. He hung up and looked at his partner with something that looked like fear. "What did he say?" the second man asked. "He said we're on our own. If we can't contain this quietly, we need to disappear." The red light on Hunter's collar was blinking so fast now that it looked like a strobe light. The dog was panting heavily, his stress levels clearly off the charts. Max noticed that Hunter kept looking at the device on his collar, as if he understood what it meant. "That thing is hurting him," Max said suddenly. "The light is making him scared." Sarah looked at the blinking device and realized that Max might be right. The dog's distress seemed to be connected to the electronic device, as if it was causing him pain or triggering traumatic memories. "Can we take it off?" she asked Tom. "I wouldn't recommend touching it," Tom replied. "We don't know what it does." But Max had already made up his mind. Despite his young age, he had an intuitive understanding of Hunter's distress. The little boy reached for the collar, his small fingers working at the buckle. "Max, no!" Sarah exclaimed, but it was too late. The moment Max's fingers touched the electronic device, something unexpected happened. The red light stopped blinking and turned a steady green. Hunter's panting slowed, and his whole body seemed to relax. "How did you know to do that?" Sarah asked in amazement. Max looked up at her with those innocent blue eyes. "Hunter told me to," he said simply. The two men in dark jackets were staring at Max with expressions of shock and fear. Whatever the little boy had just done, it wasn't supposed to be possible. "That's impossible," the first man muttered. "Only authorized personnel can reset that device." "Unless," the second man said slowly, "the dog accepted him as his handler." The words hung in the air like a revelation. Hunter had bonded with Max, and somehow that bond had overridden the electronic device's programming. The dog had chosen his new partner, and that partner was a 3-year-old boy who had shown him kindness when he was scared and alone. As the police sirens grew louder and the first patrol car appeared in the distance, Sarah realized that their quiet night at the carnival had turned into something much bigger. Hunter wasn't just any dog, and the men who were hunting him weren't just any criminals. They were all part of a story that was just beginning to unfold. A story that would test the bonds between a boy and his dog against forces they couldn't yet understand. The moment the police car pulled up to the carnival entrance, the two men in dark jackets exchanged a look that spoke volumes. Without another word, they melted back into the crowd, disappearing between the game booths and food trucks like shadows retreating from the light. Their sudden departure left Sarah, Max, Tom, and Hunter standing in an uneasy silence. "Where did they go?" Max asked, looking around with confusion. "The bad men just left." Officer Maria Rodriguez stepped out of the patrol car, her experienced eyes taking in the scene quickly. She was a 10-year veteran of the Springfield Police Department, and something about the situation immediately put her on alert. The way the security guard was standing protectively near the family, the obvious stress on the mother's face, and the large German Shepherd pressed close to the little boy all suggested this wasn't a simple case of a lost child. "I'm Officer Rodriguez," she said, approaching the group with calm authority. "I understand we have a situation here." Tom stepped forward, his relief evident. "Officer, we found the missing child, but there's more to this story. 2 men were here claiming ownership of this dog, but something felt very wrong about the whole thing." Sarah held Max's hand tightly as she explained what had happened. "They said the dog belonged to some kind of security firm, but Hunter was terrified of them, and this collar he's wearing has some kind of electronic device that was making him distressed." Officer Rodriguez crouched down to get a better look at Hunter's collar. The device that had been blinking red was now glowing a steady green, and she could see it was far more sophisticated than any normal pet tracking collar. "This looks military grade," she murmured, her concern growing. "Has anyone touched this device?" "Max did," Sarah said, watching her son stroke Hunter's fur. When he touched it, the light changed from red to green, and the dog calmed down. The officer's eyebrows rose in surprise. "That's unusual. These types of devices usually have security protocols that prevent unauthorized access." "That's what those men said too," Tom added. They seemed shocked that Max could affect the device at all. Officer Rodriguez was about to respond when her radio crackled to life. "Unit 23, be advised we have reports of suspicious activity at the carnival. 2 male subjects in dark clothing were seen leaving the area in a black SUV. License plate was obscured." "Copy that," Rodriguez replied into her radio. "The subjects may be connected to our current situation." She looked back at the group, her expression serious. "I'm going to need you all to come to the station to give statements, and we're going to need to have this collar examined by our tech unit." "Will Hunter have to go somewhere else?" Max asked, his small voice filled with worry. Officer Rodriguez studied the boy and the dog, noting how they seemed naturally bonded despite having just met. "For now, he can stay with you, but we need to find out where he came from and why those men were so interested in him." As they prepared to leave the carnival, Sarah noticed that Hunter seemed reluctant to walk too far from Max. The dog kept looking back at the little boy, as if making sure he was still there. When they reached the police car, Hunter hesitated at the door. "It's okay, boy," Max said softly. "We're going together." The words seemed to reassure Hunter, and he allowed himself to be helped into the back seat beside Max and Sarah. Officer Rodriguez watched this interaction with growing curiosity. In her years of police work, she had seen many police dogs, and Hunter's behavior suggested he had been trained for something special. The ride to the police station was quiet, with Max humming softly to Hunter while stroking his fur. The dog had completely relaxed, his head resting on Max's lap, as if he had found exactly where he belonged. Sarah watched her son with a mixture of pride and concern. Max had always been empathetic with animals, but this connection seemed different, deeper somehow. At the station, Officer Rodriguez led them to a comfortable interview room, while she called for backup from the K-9 unit and the technology department. Within an hour, the small room was bustling with activity as specialists arrived to examine Hunter and his mysterious collar. Detective James Parker, a seasoned investigator with 20 years on the force, took charge of the case. He was a tall man with graying hair and kind eyes that immediately put Max at ease. "So, you're the young man who found our friend here," Detective Parker said, kneeling down to Max's level. "Can you tell me exactly what happened when you first saw him?" Max nodded eagerly, happy to help. "He was hiding under the ticket booth, and he was really scared. His collar was blinking red, and when I touched it, it turned green." "You weren't afraid of such a big dog?" Detective Parker asked. "No," Max said simply. "He was hurt and scared. I wanted to help him." Meanwhile, Sergeant Lisa Chen from the K-9 unit was examining Hunter with expert hands. She checked his teeth, his paws, and his overall condition, while the dog remained calm under Max's reassuring presence. "This is definitely a trained working dog," Sergeant Chen reported. "His muscle tone, his alertness, his response to commands. He's had extensive professional training, but he's also been through some kind of trauma. Look at these scars." She pointed to several old wounds on Hunter's flanks and legs, marks that spoke of either harsh training or dangerous situations. The dog's eyes also had a wariness that suggested he had seen things that no animal should have to experience. Dr. Emily Watson from the police tech unit was carefully examining the collar device with specialized equipment. "This is fascinating," she said, looking up from her scanner. "The device is definitely government issue, but it's been modified. There are components here that I don't recognize." "What kind of modifications?" Detective Parker asked. "It looks like someone added a neural interface component," Dr. Watson explained. "This collar isn't just tracking the dog's location, it's monitoring his brain activity and possibly even influencing it." The room fell silent as the implications of this discovery sank in. This wasn't just a tracking collar, it was a control device. "You mean they were controlling his mind?" Sarah asked, horrified. "Not exactly controlling, Doctor," Watson clarified, "but possibly suppressing certain memories or responses. The fact that it changed when Max touched it suggests the dog was able to override the suppression when he felt safe." Max, who had been listening to all of this with the serious attention that 3-year-olds sometimes show for important conversations, suddenly spoke up. "Hunter remembers things now. That's why he's not as scared." Everyone turned to look at the little boy, surprised by his insight. "What do you mean, sweetie?" Sarah asked. "When the light was red, he couldn't remember good things," Max explained with the simple logic of childhood. "Now that it's green, he remembers that some people are nice." Detective Parker exchanged glances with his colleagues. The boy's observation was remarkably astute and might explain Hunter's dramatic change in behavior. "Max," Detective Parker said gently, "when you touched the collar, did you feel anything unusual?" Max thought for a moment, his small face scrunched in concentration. "It felt warm, and Hunter looked at me like he was saying, 'Thank you.'" Dr. Watson was taking readings from her scanner when she suddenly stopped. "Detective, you need to see this. The neural interface is still active, and it's showing unusual patterns." She showed him the display on her device, which was registering complex brainwave patterns from Hunter. But even more surprising, there were secondary readings that seemed to correspond to Max's presence. "It's almost like the dog and the boy are synchronized," Dr. Watson said in amazement. "I've never seen anything like it." Sergeant Chen, who had been quietly observing Hunter's behavior, spoke up. In all my years working with K9 units, I've seen strong bonds between handlers and their dogs. But this is different. It's like they understand each other on a level that goes beyond normal training. Officer Rodriguez, who had been coordinating with other departments, returned to the room with new information. I just got off the phone with the FBI. They're very interested in this case. Apparently, there have been reports of similar incidents in other states. Trained dogs disappearing from classified programs, mysterious men in dark suits, electronic collars with unknown technology. So, Hunter isn't the only one, Sarah said, her concern growing. It appears not, Officer Rodriguez confirmed. The FBI is sending a special agent to interview us tomorrow. In the meantime, they've asked us to keep Hunter in protective custody. What does that mean? Max asked, his voice small and worried. Detective Parker crouched down beside the boy again. It means Hunter will stay somewhere safe until we figure out what's going on. Don't worry, we won't let anyone hurt him. But Max's face crumpled with disappointment. Can't he stay with us? He likes our house. He told me so. The adults exchanged glances, touched by the boy's distress. Hunter seemed to sense Max's sadness and nuzzled closer to him, offering comfort. Actually, Sergeant Chen said thoughtfully, given the unusual bond they've formed, it might be beneficial to keep them together. The dog is clearly calmer and more responsive when Max is around. But is it safe? Sarah asked. If there are people out there looking for Hunter, won't they come looking for us too? We'll provide protection, Detective Parker assured her. And honestly, Hunter might be safer with Max than anywhere else. Those men didn't seem to have any control over him when the boy was around. Dr. Watson was still studying her readings with fascination. There's something else you should know. The modifications to this collar suggest it was part of an experimental program. The neural interface technology is years ahead of anything that should exist in civilian applications. What kind of experiment? Officer Rodriguez asked. If I had to guess, I'd say they were trying to create enhanced working dogs. Animals with improved intelligence, memory, and possibly even psychic abilities. The room fell silent again as everyone processed this information. They were dealing with something far beyond a simple case of animal abuse or theft. But why Max? Sarah asked. Why did Hunter bond with my son specifically? Dr. Watson looked at the readings on her device again. Children's brains are more flexible, more open to unusual connections. It's possible that Max was able to interface with the collar's technology in a way that an adult couldn't. Max, who had been listening to all of this while petting Hunter, suddenly looked up. Hunter wants to tell you something, but he can't use words. What does he want to tell us? Detective Parker asked, playing along with the boy's imagination. Max was quiet for a moment, his hand resting on Hunter's head. He says there are other dogs like him, and they're all scared. The bad men hurt them and made them forget who they really are. The adults stared at Max in stunned silence. The boy's words carried a weight that went far beyond childish fantasy. How do you know that? Sarah asked gently. Hunter shows me pictures in my head, Max said matter-of-factly. Like a movie, but fuzzy. Dr. Watson's scanner began beeping frantically. The neural activity is off the charts. Both the dog and the boy are showing synchronized brainwave patterns that I've never seen before. Sergeant Chen leaned forward, studying Hunter's behavior. You know, some of the most successful K9 handlers report having an almost telepathic connection with their dogs. But this seems to go beyond that. So what do we do now? Sarah asked, feeling overwhelmed by the enormity of what they were facing. Detective Parker stood up, his expression determined. First, we keep Hunter and Max together. They're clearly safer that way. Second, we work with the FBI to track down these experimental programs and the people running them. And third, we protect this family from anyone who might want to use them. Officer Rodriguez nodded in agreement. I'll coordinate with federal agents to set up security at your home, and we'll need to keep this quiet. If word gets out about what Max can do, it could put him in even more danger. As the evening wore on, arrangements were made for Hunter to stay with Max and Sarah temporarily. A veterinarian was called in to give Hunter a thorough examination, confirming that despite his past trauma, he was in good health. The electronic collar was carefully removed and taken to a secure facility for further analysis. Will Hunter be okay without his collar? Max asked, watching as Dr. Watson carefully disconnected the device. "He'll be better than okay," Sergeant Chen assured him. "That collar was hurting him, remember? Now he can be himself again." Indeed, as soon as the collar was removed, Hunter seemed to stand taller, his posture more confident. But he never moved far from Max's side, as if the boy had become his anchor in a world that had been confusing and frightening for too long. As they prepared to leave the police station, Detective Parker pulled Sarah aside. "Mrs. Chen, I want you to understand the seriousness of this situation. Your son has somehow formed a connection with a dog that appears to be part of a classified government program. There are people out there who will stop at nothing to get Hunter back, and now they know about Max." Sarah felt a chill run down her spine. "Are you saying my son is in danger?" "I'm saying we're going to do everything in our power to keep your family safe," Detective Parker replied. "But yes, there could be risks involved. If you want, we can arrange for you and Max to be relocated until this is resolved." Sarah looked at her son, who was sitting contentedly with Hunter, both of them seeming more at peace than they had all evening. "No," she said firmly. "We're not running. Max found Hunter for a reason, and I'm not going to let anyone separate them." Detective Parker nodded with respect. "I was hoping you'd say that. Your son might be the key to helping other dogs like Hunter, and possibly exposing whatever illegal program created this situation." As they walked out of the police station into the cool night air, Max looked up at the stars and then at Hunter. "We're going to help your friends, aren't we?" Hunter's tail wagged slightly and he gently nuzzled Max's hand. In that simple gesture, a promise was made. A promise that would soon lead them into an adventure bigger than any of them could. Imagine! The carnival lights were still twinkling in the distance as they drove home, but the innocence of the evening had been replaced by something far more significant. Max had found more than just a scared dog hiding under a ticket booth. He had found a friend, a mystery, and a purpose that would change all their lives forever. As Sarah tucked Max into bed that night, with Hunter lying protectively beside the boy's bed, she couldn't help but wonder what tomorrow would bring. The FBI agents, the investigation, the search for other dogs like Hunter, it all seemed overwhelming. But looking at her son's peaceful face and the gentle German shepherd who had already become part of their family, she knew they would face whatever came next together. The red light on Hunter's collar had been turned off, but the green light of hope was just beginning to shine. The next morning brought an unexpected visitor to the Chen household. FBI Special Agent Rebecca Martinez arrived just as Sarah was making breakfast for Max and preparing a bowl of food for Hunter. The agent was a woman in her early 40s with sharp eyes and a no-nonsense demeanor that immediately commanded respect. "Mrs. Chen, I'm Agent Martinez from the Federal Bureau of Investigation," she said, showing her badge. "I understand your son has made quite a remarkable discovery." Sarah invited her in, noting how Hunter's ears perked up at the mention of law enforcement. The dog seemed to recognize something familiar about Agent Martinez, though he remained close to Max, who was eating cereal at the kitchen table. "Agent Martinez," Max said politely, looking up from his breakfast. "Hunter says you smell like other police dogs." The agent's eyebrows rose in surprise. "Is that so? And how exactly does Hunter tell you these things?" Max shrugged as if it was the most natural thing in the world. "He just does, like when you think about something really loud in your head, except Hunter thinks in pictures and feelings." Agent Martinez exchanged a meaningful glance with Sarah before sitting down across from Max. "That's very interesting, Max. Can you tell me what else Hunter has shared with you?" The little boy put down his spoon and looked thoughtfully at Hunter, who had positioned himself between Max and the agent. "He's been dreaming about a place with lots of cages and bright lights. There were other dogs there, and they were all scared. Bad people in white coats did things to them that hurt." "What kind of things?" Agent Martinez asked gently. "They put things in their heads," Max said, touching his own forehead. "Like the collar thing, but inside. Hunter says it made him forget his real family." Sarah felt her heart break at these revelations. His real family? Max nodded seriously. He had a person he loved very much, a man who smelled like gun oil and coffee. Hunter misses him a lot. Agent Martinez leaned forward, her interest clearly piqued. "Max, this is very important. Can you ask Hunter if he remembers his handler's name?" Max was quiet for a moment, his small hand resting on Hunter's head. The dog's eyes seemed to grow distant, as if he was searching through buried memories. "David," Max said suddenly. His name was David, and he had kind eyes, but something bad happened to him. The agent pulled out her phone and made a quick call. "I need you to run a search for K9 handlers named David who went missing or died in the line of duty in the past 5 years. Cross-reference with any classified programs involving neural enhancement." While they waited for the information, Agent Martinez explained what the FBI had discovered about the experimental program. "We've been tracking a series of illegal experiments conducted by a private contractor called Nexus Dynamics. They were supposedly developing enhanced military working dogs, but their methods were extremely unethical." "What happened to the program?" Sarah asked. "Officially, it was shut down 3 years ago after several whistleblowers came forward, but we suspect it continued in secret. Dogs like Hunter are living proof that the experiments never really stopped." Max looked up from his cereal with troubled eyes. "Hunter says there are still dogs in the bad place. They're waiting for someone to help them." "Can Hunter show you where this place is?" Agent Martinez asked. Max closed his eyes and placed both hands on Hunter's head. The connection between them seemed to intensify, and Sarah could swear she felt something electric in the air around them. "It's cold there," Max said, his voice taking on a dreamy quality. "There are mountains and tall trees. The building looks like a hospital, but it's hidden underground. Hunter can smell fear and sadness everywhere." Agent Martinez was taking notes furiously. "Anything else? Any landmarks or identifying features?" "There's a big sign with a bird on it," Max continued. "The bird has its wings spread wide, and there are numbers underneath. Hunter can't read the numbers, but they're important." Just then, Agent Martinez's phone rang. She answered quickly, listened for a moment, then hung up with a grim expression. "We found him," she said quietly. "Officer David Rodriguez, decorated K9 handler with the Denver Police Department. He and his partner, a German Shepherd named Ranger, disappeared during a joint operation with federal agents 3 years ago. They were investigating Nexus Dynamics when they vanished." Sarah felt the pieces clicking together. "Ranger, that's Hunter's real name, isn't it?" Max looked at Hunter with new understanding. "You're Ranger. You were trying to help your friend David, but the bad people caught you." Hunter's tail wagged slightly at the sound of his real name, and for the first time since they'd found him, his posture straightened with something that looked like pride. He was remembering who he used to be. "There's more," Agent Martinez continued. "Officer Rodriguez's body was found 6 months ago in a remote area of Colorado. The official cause of death was listed as a hiking accident, but there were inconsistencies in the autopsy report." "They killed him," Max said with the matter-of-fact tone that children sometimes use for terrible truths. "Ranger knows they did," the agent nodded grimly. "We suspect as much. And if Ranger witnessed what happened, he could be the key to exposing the entire operation." But as they discussed the implications of this discovery, none of them noticed the black SUV that had been parked across the street since dawn. Inside the vehicle, 2 figures watched the house with intense interest. "The kid is definitely connected to the asset," one of them said into a secure phone. "We can see enhanced neural activity from here. Orders remain the same," came the reply. "Retrieve the asset and eliminate any witnesses. The program cannot be exposed." "What about the federal agent?" "Especially the federal agent." Back inside the house, Agent Martinez was explaining the next steps in their investigation. "We're going to need to move you to a safe house while we work on locating the Nexus facility. If they know we're getting close, they'll try to silence anyone who can expose them." "We're not hiding," Sarah said firmly. "If Ranger can help other dogs, then we're going to help him do it. Mrs. Chen, these people have already killed a police officer. They won't hesitate to hurt your family." "Then we better find them before they find us," Max said with surprising determination for a 3-year-old. Agent Martinez looked at the little boy with a mixture of admiration and concern. "Max, what you can do with Ranger is extraordinary, but it's also dangerous. There are people who would do anything to control that ability." "They can't control it," Max said simply. "It only works because Ranger trusts me, and I trust him. You can't make trust happen." The wisdom in those words struck everyone in the room. The bond between Max and Ranger wasn't something that could be replicated or weaponized. It was built on mutual respect and genuine care. "There's something else." Ranger seemed to be communicating something to Max, who nodded as if receiving important information. "Ranger says the bad people are close. They're watching us right now. Agent Martinez immediately reached for her weapon, moving to the window to peer through the blinds. I don't see anything suspicious. They're good at hiding, Max explained, but Ranger can smell them. They smell like the place where they hurt him. The agent made another quick phone call, requesting immediate backup and surveillance. We need to move you now, she said urgently. But as they prepared to leave, Max suddenly stopped. Wait, Ranger wants to show me something important first. The little boy sat down on the floor next to the German Shepherd, placing his hands on either side of the dog's head. The connection between them seemed to intensify, and Max's eyes took on that distant look that meant he was receiving information from Ranger. There's a USB drive, Max said slowly, hidden in Ranger's old collar. David put it there before the bad people caught them. Agent Martinez felt her pulse quicken. What's on the drive? Pictures and videos of the bad place, Max replied. Proof of what they were doing to the dogs. Where is this collar now? Max's face scrunched in concentration. Ranger buried it somewhere safe. He can show us, but we have to hurry. The bad people are getting ready to move. Outside, the occupants of the black SUV were indeed preparing for action. They had received orders to move in within the next 10 minutes, regardless of the federal presence. Tranquilizer for the asset, one of them said, checking his equipment. Standard elimination protocols for everyone else. What about the kid's connection to the asset? The scientists want to study it. If we can figure out how he's interfacing with the neural implants, we might be able to replicate it. Inside the house, Agent Martinez was coordinating with her backup team while Max and Ranger prepared to leave. The dog seemed agitated, constantly looking toward the windows and whining softly. He's really scared, Max observed. The bad people smell like the needles they use to hurt him. We're going to protect you both, Agent Martinez promised. I won't let anyone hurt you. But even as she spoke, she could see unmarked vehicles beginning to position themselves around the neighborhood. The net was closing, and they were running out of time. Max, I need you to help Ranger stay calm, Agent Martinez said. Can you do that for me? The little boy nodded seriously, wrapping his arms around Ranger's neck. It's okay, boy. We're going to find David's collar, and then everyone will know the truth about what they did to you. Ranger seemed to draw strength from Max's presence, his trembling subsiding as the boy's calm confidence flowed between them. The bond they shared was becoming stronger with each passing hour, and Agent Martinez was beginning to understand that separating them might be impossible. The backup team is 2 minutes out, she reported. We need to move as soon as they arrive. But as she spoke, the first tranquilizer dart shattered the kitchen window, embedding itself in the wall just inches from where Max had been standing. The attack had begun. Get down! Agent Martinez shouted, drawing her weapon as more darts flew through the broken window. Ranger immediately positioned himself over Max, shielding the boy with his body as they took cover behind the kitchen counter. The dog's training had kicked in, and despite his traumatic past, his protective instincts were stronger than his fear. Federal agents, you're surrounded! Agent Martinez called out, though she knew it was unlikely to deter their attackers. The response was another volley of tranquilizer darts, followed by the sound of the front door being forced open. The Nexus operatives were coming in fast and hard, clearly desperate to retrieve Ranger and eliminate any witnesses. Max, I need you and Ranger to get to the back of the house, Agent Martinez instructed, providing covering fire as figures in tactical gear stormed through the front door. But Max wasn't moving. Instead, he had his hands on Ranger's head and was speaking softly to the dog. Remember who you are, he whispered. Remember David, and remember that you're one of the good guys. Something extraordinary happened then. Ranger's posture changed completely, shifting from a scared, traumatized animal to a confident, trained police dog. His years of training with David Rodriguez came flooding back, overriding the conditioning that Nexus had tried to impose. With a fierce bark that shook the windows, Ranger launched himself at the first operative through the door. His attack was precise and devastating, using techniques that had been drilled into him during his police training. The operative went down hard, his weapon flying across the room. "That's my boy!" Max cheered, his young voice filled with pride. The second operative raised his tranquilizer gun toward Ranger, but Agent Martinez was faster. Her shot caught him in the shoulder, spinning him around and sending his weapon clattering to the floor. But more operatives were coming through the back door now, and the situation was deteriorating rapidly. Agent Martinez found herself caught between two groups of attackers, with Max and Ranger trapped in the middle. "This is Agent Martinez requesting immediate backup," she called into her radio. "We have multiple hostiles and civilians in danger." The response crackled back through static. "Backup is 30 seconds out. Hold your position." 30 seconds felt like an eternity as the kitchen became a battlefield. Ranger continued to fight with renewed vigor, his police training making him a formidable opponent, even against armed attackers. But there were too many of them, and tranquilizer darts were flying from multiple directions. "Ranger!" Max called out as one of the darts grazed the dog's flank. The German Shepherd stumbled, but didn't go down, his bond with Max giving him strength to fight through the chemical effects. He turned toward the boy, his eyes saying everything that words couldn't express. "I know," Max said softly, understanding completely. "We fight together." And in that moment, something incredible happened. The connection between Max and Ranger intensified, beyond anything they had experienced before. The boy seemed to tap into the dog's enhanced senses, seeing the room through Ranger's eyes and understanding the tactical situation with clarity that shouldn't have been possible for a 3-year-old. "Behind the refrigerator," Max said urgently to Agent Martinez. "There's another one coming." She spun just in time to see an operative emerging from his hiding spot, and her shot took him down before he could fire. The sound of sirens was getting closer now, and the remaining Nexus operatives seemed to realize their window was closing. The leader of the group made a desperate decision. "Take the kid," he ordered. "If we can't get the asset, at least we can study the interface." But he had underestimated both Ranger's protective instincts and Max's newfound tactical awareness. As the operative lunged toward the boy, Ranger intercepted him with perfect timing, while Max rolled away to safety, exactly as his canine partner had anticipated. The kitchen door burst open as Agent Martinez's backup team finally arrived, flooding the room with federal agents. The remaining Nexus operatives found themselves outnumbered and outgunned, with nowhere to run. "Federal agents, drop your weapons!" The fight was over in seconds, with the surviving operatives surrendering rather than facing the firepower arrayed against them. But even as the immediate danger passed, Max remained focused on Ranger, who was finally showing the effects of the tranquilizer dart. "Stay with me, boy," Max whispered, cradling the dog's head as Ranger fought to stay conscious. "We still have work to do." Agent Martinez knelt beside them, checking Ranger's vital signs. "He's going to be okay. The dose wasn't enough to bring him down completely." "Because he's stronger now," Max said with absolute certainty. "He remembers who he really is." As the chaos around them settled and the Nexus operatives were taken into custody, Agent Martinez realized that everything had changed. The attack had proven that Max and Ranger were indeed the key to exposing the illegal experiments, but it had also demonstrated that their bond was more powerful than anyone had imagined. "Mrs. Chen," Agent Martinez said, as Sarah emerged from her hiding spot, shaken but unharmed. "I think it's time we found that USB drive. If these people were willing to risk this much to stop us, then what's on that drive must be devastating to their operation." Max looked down at Ranger, whose eyes were clearer now, despite the tranquilizer. "He's ready to show us, aren't you, boy?" Ranger's tail wagged weakly, and in that simple gesture, a promise was renewed. They were going to find the evidence that David Rodriguez had died trying to protect, and they were going to make sure his sacrifice wasn't in vain. The battle for justice was just beginning, but with Max and Ranger working together, the truth was finally within reach. 2 hours later, the Chen family found themselves in a secure FBI facility, surrounded by the best technology the government had to offer. But all of that advanced equipment seemed secondary to the simple connection between a 3-year-old boy and a German Shepherd who had remembered his true purpose. Agent Martinez had assembled a task force of specialists, including Dr. Watson from the police tech unit and several FBI cybercrimes experts. The room buzzed with activity as they prepared to follow Ranger's memories to the location where David Rodriguez had hidden the crucial evidence. "Are you sure you're ready for this?" Agent Martinez asked Max, who was sitting cross-legged on the floor next to Ranger. "What we might find could be very upsetting." Max nodded with the serious expression of someone far older than his years. "Ranger needs to do this. David was his best friend, and he's been carrying this secret for too long." Dr. Watson had set up monitoring equipment to track the neural activity between Max and Ranger during their connection. "The readings are extraordinary," she reported. "It's like they're sharing a single consciousness." Sarah watched her son with a mixture of pride and concern. In just 2 days, Max had gone from being an ordinary 3-year-old to being the key witness in a major federal investigation. But she could see that this was important to him, that helping Ranger was giving him purpose. "Okay, boy," Max said softly, placing his hands on Ranger's head. "Show me where David hid the collar." The connection established immediately, and Max's eyes took on that distant look that meant he was seeing through Ranger's memories. But this time was different. The images were clearer, more detailed, as if Ranger's recovering memories were becoming stronger with each passing hour. "We're in a park," Max said slowly, his voice taking on a dreamy quality. "There are big trees and a playground. David is scared, but he's trying not to show it. He knows the bad people are coming for them." Agent Martinez leaned forward, taking notes. "Can you see any landmarks, street signs, building names, anything that might help us identify the location?" Max's face scrunched in concentration. "There's a statue of a man on a horse, and a sign that says Memorial Park. David is walking toward a big oak tree near the pond." "Memorial Park in Denver," one of the FBI technicians said immediately. "I know that park. The statue is of a Civil War general." "David is digging," Max continued, his voice filled with emotion as he experienced Ranger's memories. "He's burying the collar under the tree roots. He's telling Ranger to remember this place, to come back someday when it's safe." Tears began running down Max's cheeks as he shared Ranger's grief. "David knows he's not going to see Ranger again. He's saying goodbye." The room fell silent as everyone absorbed the tragedy of that moment. A dedicated police officer, knowing he was about to die, had taken his final moments to hide evidence that could expose his killers. "Ranger is so sad," Max whispered. "He wanted to stay with David, but David made him run. He said Ranger had to survive to tell the truth someday." Agent Martinez felt her throat tighten with emotion. "And now he can. You're helping him keep that promise to David." The journey to Denver took 3 hours by helicopter, with Max and Ranger accompanied by a full security detail. As they flew over the Rocky Mountains, Max kept his hand on Ranger's head, maintaining their connection and ensuring the dog stayed calm despite the aircraft noise. "Almost there, boy," Max said soothingly. "We're going to find what David left for us." When they landed at Memorial Park, a crowd had already gathered. Word of the story had somehow leaked to the media, and reporters were calling it the most incredible tale of loyalty and friendship they had ever covered. Police barriers kept the crowd at a safe distance, but Max could hear people calling out encouragement. "You can do it, Max! Help that brave dog! Find the truth!" The support of strangers seemed to give both Max and Ranger strength as they made their way toward the memorial statue. Ranger's nose was working constantly, sorting through 3 years of changed scents to find the familiar markers from that terrible day. "This way," Max said confidently, following Ranger's lead toward a massive oak tree near the park's central pond. He remembers this tree. David used to bring him here when they were off duty. The FBI excavation team had already cordoned off the area and brought in ground-penetrating radar to locate the buried collar. But as they set up their equipment, Ranger began digging with his powerful paws, instinctively knowing exactly where to look. "There," Max said, pointing to a spot near the tree's base. "Right there." The technicians began carefully excavating the area, using brushes and small tools to avoid damaging whatever might be buried there. The crowd watched in hushed anticipation as layers of soil were carefully removed. "I've got something," one of the technicians called out. Slowly, carefully, they uncovered a waterproof container that held David Rodriguez's collar and badge. But more importantly, attached to the collar was a small USB drive, exactly as Max had described. "David, we found it," Max whispered to Ranger, who was trembling with emotion as he saw his old partner's collar again. Agent Martinez immediately secured the drive and called for a mobile computer lab to be brought to the scene. "We're going to see what David died trying to protect," she announced. The computer technician connected the drive to a secure laptop, and within minutes, files began appearing on the screen. What they saw made everyone gasp in horror. Video after video showed dogs being subjected to cruel experiments. Neural implants were being forcibly inserted into their brains while they were conscious. The animals' terrified cries filled the air as scientists in white coats took notes and discussed the procedures like they were working on machines instead of living beings. "This is barbaric," Agent Martinez said, her voice shaking with anger. But the worst was yet to come. The files contained financial records showing that Nexus Dynamics had been selling enhanced military dogs to foreign governments and terrorist organizations. The neural implants weren't just for control. They were turning loyal American police and military dogs into weapons that could be used against their own country. Officer Rodriguez discovered this, Agent Martinez realized. That's why they killed him. Max was watching the videos with tears streaming down his face, feeling every moment of suffering through his connection with Ranger. He remembers being there, Max said softly. He saw them hurt his friends, and he couldn't stop it. The crowd that had gathered to watch was growing larger, and despite police efforts to maintain security, people were getting closer. Cell phone cameras captured every moment as the horrible truth was revealed. "The whole world is watching," Agent Martinez observed, realizing that this story was spreading across social media in real time. "Good," Max said with surprising firmness. "Everyone should know what they did. Maybe if enough people care, they'll help the other dogs too." The USB drive contained one final file that made everything clear. It was a video message from David Rodriguez himself, recorded just hours before his death. "If you're watching this, then I'm probably dead," David's voice said from the laptop speakers. "My partner Ranger and I stumbled onto something horrible. Nexus Dynamics isn't just experimenting on dogs. They're planning to use them as weapons against American citizens. I've documented everything, but I know they're coming for us. If Ranger survives, please take care of him. He's the best partner I ever had, and he deserves better than what they did to him." The message ended with David looking directly into the camera. "Ranger, if you ever see this, know that I love you, boy. You were always the best of us." Max felt Ranger's heart breaking through their connection, and he wrapped his arms around the dog's neck. "He knew you loved him too," Max whispered. "That's why you never gave up." Agent Martinez was already on her phone, coordinating with federal agencies across the country. "We need simultaneous raids on every Nexus facility. The evidence on this drive gives us everything we need for warrants." But the story was already spreading beyond law enforcement. The videos of the animal experiments had gone viral, sparking outrage around the world. Protesters were gathering outside government buildings, demanding action. Animal rights groups were calling for immediate intervention. "Max," a reporter called out from behind the police barriers, "how does it feel to be the little boy who exposed this conspiracy?" Max looked up from where he was comforting Ranger, his young face serious but determined. "I didn't expose anything," he said clearly. "Ranger did. He's the hero. He remembered everything so the other dogs could be saved." The crowd erupted in cheers and applause, recognizing the wisdom in the little boy's words. This wasn't about human heroics. It was about loyalty, friendship, and the unbreakable bond between a boy and his dog. Within hours, the raids began. FBI teams hit Nexus facilities in 6 states simultaneously, rescuing dozens of dogs and arresting the scientists and executives responsible for the illegal experiments. The underground facility that Max had seen in Ranger's memories was found in the Colorado mountains, exactly as described. 43 dogs rescued, Agent Martinez reported, as the sun began to set over Memorial Park. All of them showing signs of neural implants and psychological trauma. But they're alive, and they're safe now. Max was sitting with Ranger under the same oak tree where David Rodriguez had hidden the evidence. The dog seemed more at peace than he had since they'd found him, as if a great weight had been lifted from his shoulders. "Are you okay now?" Max asked his 4-legged friend. Ranger licked the boy's face gently, his tail wagging for the first time with pure joy rather than nervous energy. Through their connection, Max could feel that Ranger's traumatic memories were finally balanced by something stronger, the knowledge that his sacrifice and David's sacrifice had not been in vain. "He says thank you," Max announced to the crowd of reporters and onlookers, "not just from him, but from all the dogs we helped save today." As they prepared to leave the park, Agent Martinez knelt down beside Max and Ranger. "You know, the FBI could use partners like you two. When you're old enough, if you're interested in helping more animals, we'd be honored to have you on our team." Max considered this seriously. "Will there be other dogs who need help remembering who they are?" "Probably," Agent Martinez admitted. "Then, yes, Max said with the certainty that only children possess. "Ranger and I will help them all." The helicopter ride back to Springfield was quiet, with Max and Ranger both exhausted from the emotional journey they had completed together. But as they flew over the lights of the city below, Sarah could see that her son had changed. He had found his purpose in helping others, just as Ranger had found his. "Mom," Max said sleepily as they approached their destination, "can Ranger stay with us forever?" Sarah looked at the German Shepherd, who had proven himself to be not just a loyal companion, but a genuine hero. "I think that's exactly what David would have wanted," she said softly. The story that had begun with a little boy finding a scared dog under a carnival ticket booth had ended with justice for the victims and hope for the future. The bond between Max and Ranger had not only saved countless animals, but had also shown the world that love and loyalty could overcome even the darkest secrets. As they landed and prepared to go home, the crowd that had gathered to welcome them back erupted in cheers, signs reading, "Heroes come in all sizes," and "Thank you, Max and Ranger," filled the air. "Look at all those people," Max said in wonder. "They're here because of what you and Ranger did," Sarah explained. "You changed the world today." Max looked at Ranger, who was pressed close to his side, and smiled. "We didn't change the world," he said, with the wisdom of someone far older than his. "Years. We just remembered that friendship is the most important thing of all." And in that moment, as a 3-year-old boy and a brave German Shepherd walked home together, everyone who watched understood that sometimes the most extraordinary heroes come in the most ordinary packages: love, loyalty, and the courage to do what's right. These were the powers that had brought down a conspiracy and saved innocent lives. The carnival lights were still twinkling in the distance, but now they seemed to shine a little brighter, as if reflecting the hope that Max and Ranger had brought back to the world. If this story touched your heart, make sure to share it with everyone you know and tell us in the comments where you're watching from. Sometimes the most powerful force in the world is simply the love between a child and their faithful companion. The end.